This is a video that I was very unsure on making, but obviously if you're watching this, I ended up actually going forward with it. Fallout 76 had a very controversial launch, having issues in almost all areas of the game, both features of the game itself, the bugginess and state at which it was released in, and then finally even just things around pre-orders or sponsored content and merchandise being sold along with this game. But as I somewhat highlighted in a video just a few days ago in Fallout 76 2 months later, Bethesda has certainly been improving. Even though the first month of the game's release was complete chaos, the second month is definitely quite a bit better, and it makes me a bit more hesitant to highlight some of the bad things the game has done. But there's a couple of reasons I still want to make this video. First and foremost, this is meant to be a tandem piece with another video. These two videos are intended to be watched together. That of course being my video on what Fallout 76 got right. In that video I said I wanted to make that one first because I feel like people are really overlooking the good aspects of the game, but also I feel like when actually looking at a lot of the negatives of this game, we have the benefit of time. As some of this news was coming out, people could get more emotional and more involved in it, but now if you could actually take a step back and look at it because it was quite a few weeks old at this point, you could have a more objective and complete view of what actually happened or didn't. Even beyond that, actually looking at the game itself, we could see how hopefully this game will be improved in the future. So without further ado, in this video, I'm going to look at what Fallout 76 got wrong, and there's quite a few things in here, so it might be a longer one. So one of the first categories I want to look at are all of these various scandals or controversies. There were a lot, and just to kind of refresh you, because even I started to forget all of them, we had things like the game deleting itself when it came out on the PC beta, Baggate, where people are getting the wrong bag in the Power Armor editions, and then the data leak following Baggate. The Nuka dark rum controversy, where you're supposed to get this cool bottle, then you actually got this rather cheap plastic bottle and it was very overpriced. The game going on sale just a little over a week after it actually got released. And then of course the carrying over of a ton of Fallout 4 bugs in the game. One of the interesting part is most of these things don't actually affect the gameplay of Fallout 76, but they without a doubt still impact the game and definitely quite heavily. Right now, the average person looking at Fallout 76, the average gamer in the gamer community probably thinks the game is bad or has a negative user sentiment towards it. One of the major factors in that were all of these controversies. Fortunately, many of these have been resolved. It's been quite a few weeks since any of these previous controversies, and Bethesda has been in the clear for quite a while. So I'd say in that regard, there's not really a ton to fix. It's just something you could look back on and be like, wow, they really messed up multiple times in a short period of time. But even beyond that, actually looking at the game itself on release, one of the major things that it got woefully wrong is just the bugginess, the state of the game. I'm not sure what led to this, what made it so Bethesda released a game in this bad of condition, but it was really bad. There were hundreds, if not thousands of bugs present on this game in release and also in beta, which occurred right before release. And I feel like one of the things that really exemplified this and made it quite a bit worse was their patching schedule. First and foremost, there was no patch in between the final days of the beta and the official release of the game. So even though Bethesda was calling it a beta, there technically was no difference between the final beta day and the first day the game was out for everyone, or at least as far as the bugginess goes. You could actually play the game for as long as you wanted. And then when patches did start to come out, they were super small, only fixing like 20 to 30 things at any given time. I remember I made a video back then and I was like, it's going to literally take months to just take on some of the reported bugs that we had in one big Reddit post. Fortunately, we got things like the December 11th patch and even more recently the January 10th patch, each of these fixing over 100 bugs each and making the game all around feel much less buggy as it stands today. But you really have to beg the question, what happened behind the scenes at Bethesda and have they learned enough to not let this happen again? Bethesda Game Studios has always had that meme of releasing buggy games, and it seemed like they really hit a peak with Fallout 76. And even beyond that, one of the rather odd things going on with this, it felt like with each additional patch, there was a couple of new bugs added in also, and in my experience at least, this hasn't been resolved. Even with the most recent patch of the game, people are reporting way more server instability, and I'm included in that list. Recently, while trying to film videos for this, I crash way more often than I ever did previously, and maybe I was just having really good luck in the past, and now I'm getting really unlucky, but it certainly seems like something else is going on here. Bethesda has definitely gotten better at fixing some of these bugs, but but there's still so many. It's definitely not a bug-free experience, and the fact that it took pretty much 2 months to get the game to a point where it's almost ready for release is very telling. This game is probably something that should have been delayed, as it simply wasn't ready on November 14th of 2018. But then moving on to what is effectively a distant cousin of bugs, we do have exploits. These have been pretty prevalent all throughout Fallout 76's lifespan. It's another thing you have to question, is Bethesda maybe just not too well equipped for handling these? Naturally, a game company that has had predominantly single-player games where you could easily use cheats or a console isn't used to having exploits that can pretty much cripple servers or in-game economies, things like that. And well, with that in mind, Fallout 76 has had numerous and plentiful exploits, many of which still exist today and still are widely used. Just yesterday, I found what seems like a bunch of people that were duping. There have been numerous widespread duping exploits, and it feels like every time one gets fixed, there's another one to take its place. Even beyond that, there's been other things like the carry weight exploit, other experience exploits, and I feel like one of the most notable parts of this that really shines when you compare Fallout 76 to a lot of other online games that would have these issues, the rate at which they were patched with Fallout 76 simply wasn't fast enough. These things went on for weeks, and it's not like they were totally unknown or new. Several of them were literally in Fallout 4 and made their way into Fallout 76. The carry weight exploit in particular, there were several patches to Fallout 76, and this thing made it through quite a few of them. This is another thing that fortunately Bethesda is starting to improve on. In their latest Inside the Vault article, they've touched on exploits and how it's going to be an ongoing issue that they're going to try and fix. But even still, exploits have existed throughout this game's entire lifespan, and it certainly seems like, as it stands today, they're not going away anytime soon. One of the particularly interesting parts about Fallout 76 though, if you actually look back, I feel like the bugs clouded your experience so much that it was almost hard to gauge what the game's true issues were. When the game came out, it was pretty clear that the bugginess was the biggest and most prominent issue, and as a result, that's what a lot of people talked about. And then following that, we got all those different controversies, so I feel like the actual content of the game didn't actually get highlighted as much as you would think, whether that be for good reasons or bad reasons. And I would say, as it stands today, many of us feel mixed about Fallout 76's content. Let's say there was no controversies, let's say the game was released for $60 as a bug-free experience, it still wouldn't be a great game. It would probably have significantly higher review scores, but in my opinion at least, it certainly doesn't get everything right. I found now that after playing the game for a couple of months and dumping in over 100 hours across various platforms, it really doesn't feel like there's a ton of replayability with Fallout 76. And I think one of the biggest reasons for this is there's simply a lack of choice most of the time. When they announced this game wasn't having human NPCs, I honestly wasn't that bummed out. I even showed off quests from Fallout 4 that were really fun and intuitive and also didn't have human NPCs. The bigger deal was no dialogue choices. That's quite a bit different than not having human NPCs, as it really kind of takes things to the next level. Dialogue choices are a core component of every Fallout game, and I feel like with Fallout 76, the lack of these things makes it so a lot of the experiences just are linear. I play them once, I get the whole story, and I don't really have a desire to play them again. It's almost as if you're reading a book with one set ending. Shocker, everyone died. And I feel like this lack of choice, and even exemplified through dialogue choices or no dialogue choices in Fallout 76, has made me not really super eager to replay the game. I want to do one full playthrough exploring all the quests and everything, and then I think I'm kind of good. I've had that experience. And even further, it's made me not really remember or become acquainted with too many NPCs. This also could be due to the fact that many of them are robots, but even though there was tons of memes about characters in Fallout 4 and Fallout 76, I feel like that's not really a thing. The only character in the game that I felt like was super entertaining or interesting was Modus. Otherwise, a lot of the times, the interesting people were already dead and you were just reading about them or listening to their old holotapes. As of right now, at least, it doesn't seem like Fallout 76 is going to add human NPCs or even dialogue choices, so I think that replayability issue is just going to persist. Bethesda at least somewhat seems like they will try and absolve this by releasing new content that is free and pretty regularly. We know there's going to be a couple of new things coming out in just the next couple of weeks, so that's something to look forward to. But I think one of the big questions is going to be, will Bethesda be able to keep up with player demand? Right now, I know a lot of people are getting bored of the game, but eagerly looking to see what gets added in the future. If we only get new content packs every 2 months, I think a lot of people will eventually just abandon this or only come back for a week every 2 months. Because simply right now, it really doesn't doesn't feel like there's enough replayability to hold people's attention over the long span. But then even beyond that, I feel like Fallout 76 really suffers from this weird dynamic of trying to have a bunch of mechanics from their past single-player games, but at the same time being multiplayer. It just feels like a lot of times it doesn't mesh or work. And there's a couple of examples of this, such as consuming the story. Playing with friends, you naturally do have voice chat. You're talking to them, doing the quest with them, and a lot of times that is really fun. But since Fallout 76's story is told through holotapes and terminal entries, this has led to many frustrating experiences for me. Some of the holotapes in this game are long, at several minutes in length, and naturally trying to listen to a 5-minute holotape while also playing with a group of 3 other people can get frustrating because they'll start to talk or they might finish the holotape first. I don't really know what a solution to this would be other than getting better friends, but what I found is when I want to play Fallout 76's story, I play it solo. When I don't, I play with friends. I don't know if that's what Bethesda was explicitly going for when they designed the game, but that's how I think a lot of people have been consuming it. Even further, some of the other multiplayer features such as events or even PvP were just not implemented in the best manner. PvP, it feels like they didn't commit to enough, which again, fortunately is seemingly getting resolved in the next week or so I won't dwell on that too much, but it feels like even though Fallout 76 is a multiplayer game, there's not a ton of multiplayer activities or times you'll actually do multiplayer oriented things. From time to time, you'll pass across another player, you might see their base or camp, but it's very rare that I actually spend considerable amounts of time playing with them. Normally it's just like oh hey, do you have anything to trade? No? Okay, well, see you later. Or otherwise, if I'm actually doing events or questing or some other type of thing, then I normally don't see anyone at all. And I actually do feel like this is a shame because when you do get some of those multiplayer experiences, like such as at nuke zones, it is awesome. When you have 10, 15 players from the server all at the nuke zone taking on the Scorchbeast Queen together, it is a truly cool experience and it's something I want to see more of in this game. The multiplayer aspects have a ton of potential and I feel like Bethesda really just didn't tap into them fully yet. But I think partially this could be due to the server size. 24 players isn't a lot when you have a map that's this big, and I think that's something that certainly could be upped in the future as long as on the back end it actually can handle it. Some of the events sound really cool, but when you have 5 events going on and only 24 players in total, assuming the server is actually full, I think there's simply a lack of an audience to engage in some of these activities. And really what I feel like I'm highlighting here is it feels like some of Fallout 76 is really fun when playing with others, or even only fun when playing with others. Doing some of those power-up events are just tedious and frustrating and I hate doing them alone, but with a couple of friends it becomes engaging and a cool experience. On the flip side, questing by myself is the only real way I think of doing it, and I hate doing that with even one other person. And I think the great irony here is some of the most immersive experiences I've had in any Fallout game were in the single player Fallout game while I'm playing by myself. The world truly feels dead at some point, something a lot of the other games don't capture, and it's almost like they didn't fully commit to one thing or the other. They tried to maintain too many features from the past games without implementing some of the new multiplayer features enough. This is certainly something that can be resolved in the future. It won't necessarily fix all the other problems the game has, but I think fleshing out some of these things is definitely going to be good for the game and even for some of its replayability to an extent. But what about after you do all of that, finish most of the major quest lines, and finally get to the end game? Maybe that's where this game becomes fun. But no, not really, because Fallout 76 doesn't honestly have much of an end game at all. It's my understanding that a lot of people that continue to play this game kind of mess around building their camp or just trying to find some of the secrets they haven't uncovered yet, or even further just do server hopping, trying to find a rare set of plans or even some really good legendary weapon if they're too cheap to buy it off of a duper. That's a joke, I only support legitimate legendaries. And this is even made more ironic by the final quest in the game, that with taking on the Scorchbeast Queen. As I mentioned before, it's a really cool experience that becomes a server-wide event. It's one of the few that I think is done successfully. Yet considering it's the final quest of the game, most people probably do it before they really earned it. Because you'll just log onto a server and be like, oh, it's happening. So you fast travel there, and I think I was like level 35 the first time I did this. It still is a ton of fun. It's just if you actually get there legitimately on your own and launch a nuke, you probably have seen all of it already because another player did it before you when you participated. And I certainly think there could be room for expansion here. Launching nukes on different areas should give you cool new monsters that you have to take on with the rest of the server. But the endgame of Fallout 76 is certainly something Bethesda should should look at. I think they know that though. I think it's something we will see more content for in the future, or even just other things to do like team deathmatch as it's been mentioned, or just the PvP servers that we are hopefully getting soon. And then last but not least, the final major thing I want to touch on as something I think Fallout 76 got wrong is the atomic shop. And this one I would say isn't as pressing as some of the other ones because it is optional, you don't have to participate in it, but I have several complaints with this. First and foremost, many of the things we found in the atomic shop were woefully overpriced, and I know I keep using that word, but just like ridiculously priced, like $20 for a couple of skins and an outfit. Even still, some of the prices on some of the skins are absolutely outrageous, and these are a price hike even from what we saw in Fallout 4 with Creation Club, and even then, things were pretty pricey. A lot of people complained they were overpriced, but with Fallout 76, it really does take it to the next level. And although, yes, in fairness, you can earn atoms for free through the game, but it still is not like an easy process. Like, you can probably get 1 or 2 of these premium skins per month, or at least that's what I'm hearing from people that actually try and farm out some of these atoms. And it's my understanding that most people just end up biting the bullet and buying the points when they actually want something, because it does take quite a while. You don't get atoms in plentiful amounts, especially after you complete some of those one-time quests that you could only do once. But then even beyond that, they have other things like reselling certain items from Fallout 4 with just kind of a skin touch-up. I made a whole video on that, and I still think it's absolutely ridiculous. And also, there's been a ton of content added onto the shop while we haven't got a ton of content in Fallout 76's core game. I feel like we could use more of a mesh, and hopefully this is something that will change in the coming weeks as we do get more content in the core game. But either way, yeah, those are some of the major issues I take with Fallout 76. Obviously, not everyone's going to agree with this video. I think there's a lot of things people don't like about this game, and I'd love to hear what you don't like in the comments down below. But at the same time, Bethesda certainly has been on the up and up. Things are improving, and hopefully by the end of 2019, Fallout 76 won't suffer from a lot of these issues. In this video, I tried to actually pose them as, well, this is the problem, but I think this is how they could fix it, or this is how they're already fixing it. And I think that's one of the cool parts. A lot of these major issues are already being fixed, or there's plans to fix them coming soon. Either way, as always, again, I thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed this one. Hopefully you found it informative. And for those of you that just started classes like me, hopefully you had a good first day. But with that, I hope to see you guys all next time. Later.